Hello and welcome to the program. It's 4 p.m. here in Korea, and I'm Lee Ji-yoon. We begin with the chaos in Tripoli. Suicide bombers attacked a luxury hotel in the Libyan capital, killing at least 10 people. The Islamic State's Libya branch has claimed responsibility for this attack. Our Kim In-ji has the latest.
A pair of gunmen stormed a luxury hotel in Tripoli Tuesday local time, killing at least 10 people, including 5 foreigners, before blowing themselves up. The attack began with a car bombing at the 5-star Corinthia Hotel, which is popular among government officials and visiting delegations. Security personnel evacuated guests, including the country's prime minister. The deaths of a French and an American national have been confirmed by their governments. The AFP said earlier that a Korean was among the dead. However, Seoul's foreign ministry said that no Korean casualties have been reported so far, citing Libyan officials, adding that it will report any new developments. A group calling itself Islamic State in Tripoli province said in a Twitter message it is responsible for the attack, saying it was revenge for an al-Qaeda terrorist suspect who died in the U.S. earlier this month. The Libyan prime minister condemned the attack and vowed that those responsible would be brought to justice. Kim In-ji, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, the Islamic State has given Japan 24 hours to save Kenji Goto, its second Japanese hostage. In a new video, the group threatens to kill Goto and a Jordanian pilot within 24 hours, unless a convicted female suicide bomber detained in Jordan is released. The Japanese government says it's doing all it can to bring its citizen home. Our Chim Young-gil tells us more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Wednesday called a new video featuring the Japanese hostage Kenji Goto despicable and vowed to secure his release.
It's a despicable act. I feel strong anger. I have put out an order that we work together as one on securing the release of Kenji Goto as soon as possible.
The 2-minute video, which was posted on YouTube on Tuesday, demands the release of Sajida al-Rishawi, an Iraqi woman sentenced to death in Jordan for her involvement in a 2005 hotel terror attack. The video's narrator says any more delays by the Jordanian government to release the Iraqi suicide bomber will mean they'll be responsible for the death of their pilot. The Jordanian pilot was captured after his jet crashed in Syria last December during a bombing mission against the militants. The Japanese government has been asking for the Jordanian government's support for Goto's release. In a previous video uploaded on Saturday, a voice purported to be Goto's announced that Islamic State militants had executed fellow Japanese hostage Haruna Yukawa, who was seized in August. Goto is a freelance journalist who was taken hostage in Syria in October while trying to rescue Yukawa. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
The chief nuclear envoys from South Korea, the United States, and Japan are meeting in Tokyo for talks on this Wednesday. Topping the agenda are North Korea's nuclear ambitions and ways to resume the six-party nuclear talks. The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, aimed at denuclearizing the North, has been stalled since late 2008. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said South Korea is seeking more bilateral and trilateral meetings within the six-party format this year, in addition to discussing North Korea's nuclear program during inter-Korean talks. And it looks like North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be going to Russia after all. Citing the Kremlin, Seoul-based Yonhap News reported this morning that Kim is among the 20 heads of state that have confirmed their plans to attend Russia's celebrations, marking the 70th anniversary of victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. The report added, however, that the Kremlin has not yet finalized its guest list. If the North Korean leader visits Russia, it will be his first trip abroad since coming into power in 2011. Russia also invited President Park Geun-hye to this event, but she has yet to confirm her attendance. For the first time since 2008, South Korea will resume a government-run program to support the training of North Korean doctors in Germany. The Unification Ministry said Wednesday that it will give the North Korea-Germany Medical Association over $80,000 from the Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund. Germany first launched this project back in 2001, which invites North Korean doctors to learn medical techniques at German hospitals. This latest resumption of the aid is part of President Park Geun-hye's push to expand humanitarian assistance to North Korea, apart from political tensions. The top U.S. official in South Korea has expressed his support for Seoul in its bitter diplomatic row with Tokyo over Japan's past wrongdoings. U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert said Washington is aware that Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of thousands of Korean women is a deeply emotional issue for Koreans. Our Hwang Sung-hee has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's seemingly unapologetic attitude about Japan's wartime atrocities is drawing concerns from the United States. In an interview on Tuesday, U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert recognized the gravity of the so-called comfort women issue.
The President of the United States, when he was here in April, called the treatment shocking. So we know that it's tough and a very emotional issue.
The unresolved matter of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women has been the biggest thorn in Seoul and Tokyo's bilateral ties. Abe stirred things up this week by hinting that his so-called Abe statement may drop words of apology used in statements by his predecessors. He is set to unveil it this summer to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Lippert expressed U.S. support for the existing Kono and Murayama statements and addressed President Park Geun-hye's recent efforts to mend ties.
We found that President Park's recent proposal of a trilateral foreign minister meeting as a constructive step that could possibly lead to a trilateral summit.
The ambassador welcomed Seoul's efforts to improve relations with Pyongyang, saying the U.S. has no concerns with the speed or scope of the inter-Korean dialogue proposed by President Park. And when will Washington be ready to engage with the communist state? That, he said, is when the North is willing to take steps for a complete, irreversible, verifiable denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Korea's central bank is keeping a close eye on global oil prices given the growing uncertainties. During a meeting with economic experts on Wednesday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ji-yoon said the Korean economy could easily be affected by crude oil prices. Therefore, he said the bank is devising scenarios for both cases if prices fall further or rebound. The governor also said they're looking into just how long the low price trend will continue, saying that the bank had expected oil prices to rebound in the second half of the year when it released its new growth outlook earlier this month. South Korea ranked in the top 30 countries in terms of economic freedom. The list drawn up by the U.S.-based Heritage Foundation gives South Korea a score of 71.5, which is 0.3 points higher than last year. South Korea also jumped 2 ranks from 31st to 29th. The country scored relatively high in terms of giving local companies and its finance sector freedom to do business. But it did score poorly in terms of giving freedom to laborers and public transparency. Hong Kong topped the list, followed closely by Singapore. North Korea was rock bottom. In this day and age, it's becoming more and more important to teach children how to program computer software. And the government is also feeling that need, so it's planning to expand its plans to teach elementary school kids the basics. The plan is ambitious, but is the framework in place? Our Shin Se-min explains.
Developing your own computer software would be a daunting task for the uninitiated, but it's a key skill to know in this increasing technological age. Kids in Korean schools are learning the basics of software design using this program called Scratch.
I used to think designing and developing software was difficult, but I realized that it can be quite easy using programs such as this.
By matching up some programming codes and hooking up the light sensors to the system, children can even create their own computer game.
Learning the concept of software allows them to understand the computer games they play. I also see them introducing software programs to their younger brothers and sisters. It's a great way of learning and owning the skills they've acquired.
Software education is being rolled out across more schools in Korea. The Science Ministry is aiming to up the number of elementary and middle schools teaching software from 72 to more than 230 this year. The ministry also plans to hold more than 10 creative software camps in 2015.
Teaching software development is a great way of stimulating young minds and getting them interested in programming.
The ideas are grand, but putting them into practice could prove trickier. Many schools in Korea still lack enough computer labs, PCs, and teachers sufficiently trained in programming. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Well, strict regulations have been keeping startups and other Korean companies from jumping into financial technology industry here in Korea. But now the government is trying to undo some of those regulations to promote financial technology as a new growth engine. Our Kang Chae-ri reports.
The day when you can wire money to your friends after just a quick fingerprint or retina scan may not be too far away. Korea's financial authorities have announced a set of measures to make sure the fintech industry, short for financial technology, ensures the ultimate convenience. The transaction limit is set to go up, and the entry barrier is to go down. The idea here is to simplify mobile payments and encourage innovation in finance. In the bigger picture, it's part of the Park Geun-hye administration's campaign to deregulate and find new growth engines. The volume of mobile payments has been growing fast in Korea, too, with the total flirting with the $3 billion mark as of the second quarter of last year. And with digital wallets such as Apple Pay and Alipay replacing cash and credit cards, the global market is expected to grow fast. There are security concerns with cyber breaches at major government agencies and banks over the past few years in Korea. Authorities say they are planning to hold the IT companies involved legally responsible and increase the level of compensation if breaches occur. Now, after this latest move to cut some of the red tape, the focus is on how traditional banks will take to the challenge and how new startups will make names for themselves in the new financial landscape. Kang Chae-ri, ARIRANG News.
Apple's fiscal first quarter results are in, and the numbers show that the company did even better than what investors are expecting from them. It sold 74.5 million iPhones in the first holiday quarter, thanks to its two new models with bigger screens. Our Kim Ji-yoon tells us more.
Apple saw its revenue and profits soar during the holiday quarter thanks to its record sales of its plus-sized iPhones. Apple sold 74.5 million iPhones in its fiscal 2015 first quarter, up 46% from the same period the previous year. That's in comparison to the 51 million units of its iPhone 5 model sold during the same period a year earlier. Sales during the October to December period drove the company's total revenue to $74.6 billion, up 30% from a year earlier. The company's net profit shot up to its highest level of $18 billion, reporting earnings of $3.06 a share. Buoyed by its earnings report, Apple shares soared nearly 7% at one point during Tuesday trading, closing at $109 a share. The bigger screens are mainly responsible for the popularity of Apple's iPhone 6 and 6 Plus models released in September 2014. They're the biggest iPhones yet, equipped with a 4.7-inch and 5.5-inch screen when measured diagonally. That compares to the 4-inch screen on its predecessor iPhone 5 models. Apple is predicting another amazing quarter in the 3 months leading to March, with quarterly revenue of between $52 to $55 billion. This while other U.S. companies such as Microsoft have lowered their forecast due to the strength of the dollar. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Again, that was our Kwon So-ah reporting for us, not Kim Ji-yeon. All right. World leaders gathered with survivors of the Auschwitz camp in Poland as Tuesday marked the 70 years since its liberation. There were memorials held around the world, but hundreds of survivors made their way to the infamous concentration camp site itself, where they have spent their childhood to mourn, remember, and remind the world of the atrocities committed by Nazi soldiers in the past. Our Kim Hyun-bin takes us there.
Nazi Germany's largest and most notorious concentration camp, Auschwitz, was where some 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, were killed between 1940 and 1945. Over 300 aging survivors and a host of world leaders visited Auschwitz on Tuesday to reflect upon the slaughter that took place there. Over 70 years have passed, but the last survivor said the world should never forget the horrors that took place in Auschwitz and the Nazis' other death camps.
Some of the people still saying that it never happened. I'm here to tell the world it happened, and the world have to learn from it and to live in peace.
The elderly, women, and young children were killed in gas chambers and were burnt into ashes in incinerators, proof of the Nazis' atrocities.
They were killing people like nothing. It didn't mean anything. The smell was so bad here from burning people.
The event could mark one of the last major anniversaries attended by a large showing of survivors, given that the youngest are now in their 70s. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, a new cabinet has been formed in Greece to govern the debt-laden nation. At the post of finance minister, new Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras named economist Yanis Varoufakis to lead the charge to renegotiate the country's massive bailout, as was promised by the far-left Syriza party, which enjoyed a big win at Sunday's general elections. The new Greek-Australian finance minister is described as an outspoken critic of the bailout conditions imposed on Greece. A member of the Independent Greeks Party, a Syriza coalition partner, was named to the post of defense minister. It's one of the most popular and well-known productions here in Korea, featuring drum beats and kitchen utensils. Nanta recently made history for being the most watched Korean production of all time. Our Connie Lee tells us what this means for Korea's performing arts arena.
There's a lot of drumming, beating, knife wielding, and acting. This is just a brief behind-the-scenes look at Korea's very own production of Nanta. The rhythmic show just made history, hitting the 10 million viewer mark at home and abroad at the end of last year. That makes this not only the longest-running show in Korea, now in its 18th year, but also the most-watched Korean production of all time.
For a local theatrical production to hit 10 million viewers, it's unheard of, but Nanta did it. This gives hope to other locally made productions that they too could succeed.
To mark this milestone, a PMC production, the firm behind the show, celebrated this week and honored the original cast members, pictured on the trademark Nanta poster. You might recognize some of them, like actor Lee Ji-yoon, who's had a recent string of hit movies. The nonverbal show about a group of chefs cooking for a wedding banquet came to life in 1997 by longtime actor turned producer and director Song Seung-hwan.
I was inspired by childhood memories of hearing my mother cook in the kitchen. I wanted to create a show that incorporated the traditional Korean rhythms of samulori and thought the kitchen had a number of items that could create those beats.
After 2 years, the show, also known as Cookin' in the West, hit the global stage, becoming the first Korean production to enter the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 1999, and then in 2003, becoming Korea's debut on Broadway. Since then, Nanta has toured the globe and has been shown more than 31,000 times in 289 cities and 51 different countries. Critics rave about the show's comedic features, its family-friendly nature, and the fun Korean beats that can get any crowd going.
When I first created the show, I didn't think it would last this long. Today, I see even greater opportunities for Korean-made productions to succeed even more abroad.
Officials now have their eyes set squarely on China, as a Nanta theater is set to be built in Guangzhou by this June. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And although we in the capital have not been seeing too much snow lately, Gangwon-do province continues to be blanketed in snow. A festival that only comes around this time of the year has opened there recently, and our Im Yoon-hee tells us more about it.
Crystal clear skies and a winter wonderland. Every year, the Gangwon-do region gets blanketed in fluffy snow, creating a magical place that seems miles away from reality. Nestled within the area is the Taebeksan Mountain, a mountain that soars 1,576 meters into the blue skies, a mountain known for its famous azalea plants and ancient yew trees. But for now, everything is quiet underneath the winter snow. And to celebrate, a festival is held on the Taebeksan Mountain. People gather from all over the peninsula to trek the snowy paths and see the many beautiful sights of the mountain and the festival, including the massive ice sculptures that decorate these hills.
We don't see much snow in Suncheon, where we're from. Here, there are huge ice sculptures and beautiful green lights to see.
Away from the hustle and bustle of the city, this year's Taebeksan Mountain Snow Festival offers the entire family a whirlwind of an experience.
Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
Welcome back. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. It was -8 degrees here in Seoul this morning, and even though the mercury has risen since then, it's going to be a cold day all day long with highs barely making it above 0 degrees. But with the wind chill, it will feel more like -10. Now, starting tomorrow, temperatures are expected to rebound back to the seasonal average, although there will be a sudden drop on Saturday, so make sure to dress accordingly. Now, if it hadn't been for the cold, it would have been a perfect day today with clear skies and good visibility of up to 20 kilometers. However, due to the easterly moving wind, a cold snap advisory was issued for Gangwon-do province this morning, while there are snowstorms in Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Now to our readings for today. Seoul will peak about to 2 degrees this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top higher at 4 and 7 degrees. And moving over to other regions such as Jeju Island gets up to 6. Dokdo is chilly at 1, while Mangkeungang drops way down to -8 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
All right, brace yourself for that cold weather today for those of you tuning in from Korea. That's all the news I have for you now, but I'll be back with Daniel at 6 p.m. Korea time for the latest updates.